So welcome to today's webinar. My name's Carly Hanson. I'm the Sector Development Officer at Community Legal Centres Queensland. And we're today talking about how you can benefit from having TAFE students in your community legal centre. So before we do pass over to our presenter today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're holding today's webinar. So in Brisbane, they're the Turrbal and the Yagara people. I wish to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future, and acknowledge the very important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders continue to play in our society. As today's webinar is being viewed by people throughout the state and possibly throughout the country, I'd also like to pay respect to the traditional owners of the land throughout Australia and extend a very warm welcome to any First Australians who are listening in today. So, as mentioned, we're hearing today from Christina Bradley, who's a teacher at the TAFE Queensland team, and she'll be talking to us about how you can benefit from having a TAFE legal services student at your centre. So just as by way of introduction, TAFE Queensland delivers a Diploma of Legal Services, which is aimed at getting individuals work ready for administrative and paralegal roles across both the private and community legal sectors. These students are exposed to various areas of the law, including family law, criminal and civil, all of which are covered by community legal centres, as you know. And they offer the necessary skills and knowledge to support legal practitioners in providing superior assistance to clients. So today, Christine is going to give you a bit of an overview about how students from the diploma can be linked up with local community legal centres to undertake volunteer work placements and offer some administrative support while also benefiting the students by giving them some valuable work skills. So today's webinar is being recorded and we'll have the webinar recording available to download later today. The PowerPoints have been emailed out late yesterday afternoon for those who have registered, and I've also uploaded those to the handout section of the control panel, so you can download those if you need to. So we'll take questions at the end, and hopefully for those who have joined us before, you're well aware of how to do that. So you can pop your questions in as we go, but we'll probably address those at the end of the presentation. So just using the chat box or the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. We're not holding any polls today, but we do only have a small group. So if you do have some detailed questions or some questions particular to your centre and your centre's experience, we are more than happy to take those questions as well. So I might just hand over to Christina now. So thank you very much, Christina. Take it away.
Thanks, Carly. Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Bradley, and I'm one of the teachers at TAFE Queensland Brisbane. I'm primarily based at our South Bank campus, but we run our programs from Logan all the way up to Caboolture. So I'll just give you some information about what our program does and what our students, I guess, the skills that they gain from our program. So today, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what we do in the Diploma of Legal Services so you understand what types of skills and knowledge that our students are getting, how our students can benefit your organisations and the locations of where our students are. So if you're outside of the metropolitan area, for example, we can provide some students or students are available outside of the Brisbane CBD area, and the availability of our students while they're studying with us. So let's go. Okay. So the Diploma of Legal Services has 10 units of competency that a student must complete in order to gain their Diploma of Legal Services. They complete the Diploma of Legal Services over a 12-month time period. And the units that are involved, so I'm just going to explain each of these units in a little bit of detail, but if you'd like an extended detail information, I can give that to you at the end. So a couple of the soft skill units that we have in our Diploma of Legal Services are the develop and nurture relationships and maintaining and enhancing professional practice. So we cluster or we co-assess these units together because They cover a lot of the communication styles that we expect students to understand how to communicate with our different clients, acknowledge the different levels of communication that is required when dealing with our clients. It also looks at support services, so the different types of support agencies that we can refer our clients to, as well as professional development and networking. So there's a heavy component in there about networking with other professionals in the industry, as well as support agencies, and communicating well with our clients. In addition to those soft skills, we have a lot of legal specific units in our program, and we believe that they are probably the units or the areas that most general practitioners would cover in their firm. So we've tried to keep it as generic as we could. So the applied legal principles in family law, we get our students to look at divorce and how to complete the divorce application through the Commonwealth portal, as well as consent orders in property and children matters. So we look at ICL matters, we look at de facto relationships, we look at the Family Law Act and the roles that the Family Court and the Federal Circuit Court play in all of these types of situations. So there's quite a lot that we do in that unit. So I can explain that in more detail if you'd like. The next unit, the Applied Legal Principles in Criminal Law, we focus on getting students to work through the criminal code quite heavily. They look at offences against a person, offences against property. They look at defences and excuses. They learn how to write a letter to a client, advising a client on whether they are likely to be guilty or found guilty or not guilty based on the circumstances of their particular matter. In addition to that, we get them to research and look into some high-profile criminal cases and debate, I guess. One of their assessments is identifying whether juries are a good fit for high criminal profile cases, considering the media influence that we have in today's society. So that's always really interesting for our students. In our property law unit, we get them to do a conveyance file. So they produce a contract of sale. So based on the information from a client, they create and draft up a contract of sale. They complete the forms 1 and 24. We get them to look at mortgage documents and understanding what they do and how to put a mortgage onto a title, as well as releasing mortgages. We also look at leases in a property matter, so how to complete a lease document for residential property, and the responsibilities relating to the owners of a rental property, as well as the tenants of the property. So we look in and we go into the Residential Tenancy Authority Act, as well as their website, and we get people to come in and have a chat to them about that. In relation to our civil law procedures, we get them looking at the UCPR quite extensively. We get them looking at and completing statements of claims, claim forms. We get them to draft responses and defences. We get them to have a look at how civil matters are started all the way through to completing a civil matter, and based on a scenario, they work through a particular civil matter from start to finish. In relation to the wills and probate matter unit, we get students looking at developing a will and the requirements around that, through to when someone passes, the processes relating to probate matters. So completing all the relevant documents to be lodged with the courts in relation to probate, as well as interviewing clients in class, each other. Students start from basically a blank document when it comes to wills, and through the process of getting information from their client or their other student, based on that information, they then develop a will from the clauses that we've downloaded from the Queensland Law Society. We use those clauses that are provided as a guide, as well as the checklist and all of those kinds of things from QLS. So that's really, really good for them, and they get a lot out of that. In relation to compliance requirements, we get students looking at the Fair Work Australia website. We get them looking at various pieces of legislation in relation to the Anti-Discrimination Act, the Age Discrimination Act, the Sex Discrimination Act. Sorry, just had a blank there. Yeah, so we get them having a look at quite a lot of those pieces of legislations to understand the requirements that not only law firms are required to adhere to, but also in your general work environments. We get them having a look at the Australian Solicitor Conduct Rules, understanding their responsibilities under the Australian Solicitor Conduct Rules. We go into the Queensland Law Society website and have a look at what's been happening in this space in relation to maybe some non-compliances, so students actually understand that that the legislation that they're reading does have consequences if you breach those pieces of legislation. And then they also look at doing up a compliance report. So they start a new firm, and basically from there they identify particular risks to that organisation and put in some compliance framework suggestions for the partners of the firm to implement to ensure that we adhere to the relevant pieces of legislation. So that's really good. In our identify and apply the legal framework, this is our first unit that students complete, and no matter what program that they do with TAFE, whether it's the legal services or our crime and justice programs, every student that comes through TAFE does this for justice and legal, does this particular unit. It's the who's who in the zoo, knowing all your different courts, both state and federal courts, knowing all the different parties, knowing how to enter a court, knowing the different parties in a legal firm. So understanding basically the relevant stakeholders involved in the legal industry. And last but not least, the last unit that we do look at is researching secondary sources. So students are required to look at, in addition to legislation and case law, outside of that, we get them looking at secondary sources. So journal articles, so how to search for journal articles, how to distinguish between a good source compared to something that might be quite biased. What else? they then use that information to produce a report that links in with the criminal law unit based around that, whether we should have juries or not. So there's quite a lot of information out there that they pull on and use, and we teach them how to put a report together, how to reference in text as well as the bibliography. We try and get them to follow the AGLC referencing guide, but with TAFE, the main reference guide is Harvard, so we're not too either way. As long as they follow one reference source, we're fine with that. So there's quite a lot that they learn from that. Yeah, so that's our units. Okay. So when we develop our program, we have a lot of industry involvement in our program through what we call our Professional Learning Committee. Our PLC, when we create assessments, we have to ensure that they reflect current industry practices. So we involve people from all different parts of the legal and justice fraternity, such as people from the Brisbane City Council in their compliance area. We have lawyers that have come in to assist with reviewing assessments. We've had police officers coming in and reviewing assessments. We've had Carly coming in and giving us some feedback. So we try our best to make sure that they reflect what is currently happening in practice. And an example of that is knowing that the changes with the wills and probates, with the advertising process being that we don't have to advertise in our local newspaper anymore. We've changed and updated our assessments to reflect that, so that when our students come out to you, they know what's happening properly. And because they're using documents from the court websites, they'll be familiar with that. So we've tried really hard to make sure it's reflecting what's going on out there for you guys. Okay, so some of the skills that they get a lot of skills in drafting legal documents. We do so much of that in the course. It's not funny, to be honest. They're bombed with legal documents. We spend a lot of time in the Queensland Court website, in the Forms website, on the family law website or family courts websites, getting all the documents that you use. So they draft a lot of legal documents by the time that they leave us. They prepare a lot of court documentation. A lot of it's in draft, obviously, because that's what they're expected to do as legal secretaries. It's not supposed to be a final type of thing for them. There's a lot of report writing skills and letter writing skills. So we get them to write a lot of letters to clients, a lot of emails, a lot of reports. So by the time that they finish with us, they have an understanding of the level of professionalism that's required in their letters and communication with clients. We focus heavily on verbal communication because we know that they're usually your frontline staff to start with, and it is important that they know how to communicate effectively with your clients. So we work heavily on that and making sure that they understand that there's different ways in which you can communicate with a client and what's effective and what's not effective. They work a lot with Microsoft Office and using computers. So I was telling Carly just before that we get them to do a lot of researching so we have computers. We're in a computer room at all times. So a lot of their delivery is we provide them with some information, and then they're required to go and research based on activity sheets or a scenario with a client coming in. This is what's going on. You need to go find them this information, this support agency to best suit their situation. And then you've got to come back and either deliver it to the class. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning, so a lot of discussion that goes on. so that they can get comfortable with talking in front of others, which is really, really good, as well as knowing their way around all the various websites that we use in our industry. They get client interaction as, I guess, where they pretend to be clients, or I'll pretend to be their client and I'll say, this is what's going on in my life, help me out, what can you do for me? And so then they have to go off and find some support agencies that will support my situation. So yeah, there's a lot of skills that they gain from our program. Some of the knowledge that they gain from our program, they get a lot of information around privacy and confidentiality requirements, which is really, really huge for you guys. Knowing that you can't disclose particular information to other parties unless you have your client's permission. We get them, they understand where to find legislation, how to access legislation, and by the end of the time with us, they're quite good at reading legislation, which is really, it's amazing to see. They know where to go in relation to your court, where to find them on the internet, how to find the documents on the court websites, how to find case law on the court websites. Yeah, it's amazing. They also get, through our program, we touch on about 29 different pieces of legislation, and they need to use all 29 pieces of legislation in order to be found competent in our Diploma of Legal Services. So there's quite a lot that they get into. And we do talk a lot about your trust accounting and all of that kind of stuff. So the Legal Profession Act is one of those ones that we really look into as well. They get a lot of knowledge about identifying client needs and how to address those needs and how to refer clients if needed to, and how to network with others. There's a lot of networking that they do. In one of their units, we get them to actually do a weekly blog where they have to interact with each other in that space. So they have to write about a particular issue, and then they have to go in and look at other students' blogs and provide feedback on that. So it's quite a good way for students to start interacting and acting in a professional space with each other. So how can they benefit you guys? I think that these guys, our students from our Diploma of Legal Services, they're really super keen in getting administrative work in the legal sector. They come in and they're really, really, most of them are either looking to go on to university in law, or they're looking at getting jobs in the legal industry, and this is one of the ways in which they want to get that admin role. So I think they can be a huge benefit to you guys, because they are skilled by the time that they get to the end of our program in the administrative work that you need in your CLC. So they are there to help you with all your general office duty stuff, filing, copying, getting some of your documents together, doing some research for you, all that stuff that that you might not have a lot of time for. They can do that for you, and they're really super keen in doing that for you because that's what they've been trained to do. So I think that's a huge benefit to you guys, and that's why we're here today. A lot of our students, when they come in, because they are looking for work in the industry but haven't got the experience yet, so they find it difficult to get their foot in the door. So I suggest to them to go out and find work experience by going to their local legal firms and asking to do some work experience. So hopefully you guys might consider taking our students on to help them out with gaining those skills and experience. So we're hoping to create a partnership between us and you guys to help help you out with providing you with some really skilled and keen legal admin, as well as you guys giving us feedback on how we're doing, what are we doing well in our program after having our students with you. Is there anything else that we could do better? Do you think that we could do something different? That's what we want. We want to make sure that our program is the best that it can be for you guys. That's our ultimate goal. And I guess a major benefit is that because you've got these guys coming in as volunteers in your CLCs, you'll have the first pick of our graduating students looking for, if you're looking for an employee. So you'll have the cream of the crop, so to speak, coming out of our program. We have a number of legal firms throughout the year that contact us already looking for graduating students or students currently doing our program, and they're really impressed with the quality of our student when they come out and they gain employment with them. So that's really, really exciting for us because we haven't really advertised that out to the community. So there's some of the benefits. You can ask any more if you want, any more questions in relation to that. I don't mind. Where are our students? Our face-to-face students sit at various campuses. So currently we've got students at Caboolture doing a dual diploma of business and legal. We've got students down on the Gold Coast doing a diploma of legal services. We are starting a diploma of legal services at Logan Lee next year. We have primarily run our program out of Mount Gravatt as well as South Bank. So we have quite a big footprint, and I know our southwest region, which is like the Ipswich area, they're looking at starting a program, the Diploma of Legal Services, out that way next year as well. So our students come from far and wide in that respect, as well as students completing this program online, and those students can be based anywhere. So I've got some facts from my counterpart from our online team, and there's about 30% of our students come from outside of the metropolitan area. I know we've got students that are coming from that do the online course up in Townsville and possibly further afield. A lot of the students in our online space are females. Are looking at either mothers returning to work or just interested in the actual legal industry. A lot of our students that come in are either looking for a diploma to get into being a legal secretary, or they're using it as a stepping stone to get into university to do a Bachelor of Law. So there's a lot of different reasons why they're coming to our to do our program, but yeah, they're all over the state, as well as our program is a national qualification, which means that people outside of Queensland can do this program as well and gain those same skills. So if you are a CLC that's in another state and you're interested, by all means get in contact with us and we'll see what we can do. Student availability. So students come in to our program are generally committed to a full-time study load. That's usually about a 2 to 3 day, 2.5 day a week over a 12-month period. So they've got a couple of days either side that they can come out and assist your CLC. So students are ideally looking for maybe a day a week over a short period of time, or whatever you want to negotiate with the student, whatever suits you and the student. As a student completes their program, we're pretty flexible in that if it's near the end of their diploma and they gain employment and they've got maybe a couple of assessments left, there's a couple of weeks left to go, we work with the students so that they can go to work and finish their diploma with us. So we just work with the student when it comes to that on an individual basis. So yeah, their availability is generally a day a week, but can be negotiated. Okay. I think I've talked over this a little bit prior with the skills that they gain, but skills that students already possess. Generally, a lot of them are either coming out of school straight into TAFE, or they're in their early 20s and have had some prior experience with or customer service experience. So they do have the ability and understanding of how to communicate well with clients in a face-to-face environment. They have phone skills, so being able to talk to a client over the phone. They have, because of the program, they end up with a lot of skills in completing various forms and being able to assist clients with inquiries. So, yeah. Okay, that's all I have for you. Any questions?
Thanks, Christina. So just to remind you that you can ask questions by typing your question into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. So take advantage of that while Christina's here if you do have any questions about how it could work in your centre. For me personally, I see some potential benefits in that they are doing really quite practical work in their qualifications. So they already have that sort of hands-on knowledge and skill base around accessing court documents and completing letters and talking to clients on the phone, which are many of the skills that you might utilise a student or a volunteer in your centre. So we'll just wait for any more questions to come through. But what I thought I might ask Christina is whether you talk about community legal centres to students across this qualification.
We do. We do talk about what you guys do out there. We do kind of more focus on the support agencies like DV Connect, Victim Assist, those types of agencies more. But we definitely do talk about you guys and what you guys do. Yep.
Great. So Anna's asked a question as well. So what time of year do the students undertake placement and for how long?
Anna, our students do an intake at the beginning of the year as well as a mid-year intake into our programs. And because there's no requirement on a student to do placement, it's not a formal requirement of the program, we just highly recommend it to our students so that they get some exposure to the legal industry to help them gain employment afterwards. So we leave that in our students' hands to go out and actively find some work placements. So if they come to us and ask us, hey, I found a work placement, I need a week off, we allow that to happen. So yeah, it's at any time that the student wishes.
So that really gives quite a bit of flexibility, because there are, I guess, from my knowledge of how students and volunteers are sometimes used in community legal centres, is that there's sort of the 1 day a week for a 6-month period kind of model, or there may be a particular project that runs for 1 or 2 weeks, and then has a sort of an end date where the centre might be able to take a student offline and basically get them to assist with a particular project or a particular client matter, for example, and that could be accommodated potentially.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Anna, for your question. Do we have any other questions from anyone else who's listening in this morning? So I guess for centres who may already have students in their centre, this would be an alternative to perhaps partnering with a university or taking university students who, while are fantastic, have a slightly different skill set. And perhaps the other difference is that many of these TAFE students, once they've finished their qualification, which is obviously a shorter qualification than a law degree, which is usually 4 or 5 years, this one goes for only 1 year, many of these students are actually looking to actually work in as paralegals or as legal assistants rather than sort of heading off into law, the solicitor pathway. So there may be some advantages there because you're actually they're wanting to stay in that kind of role rather than sort of having it as a stepping stone.
We make it very clear that that's where they're heading, and we structure our program around the concept that you're the legal secretary, you're supporting the lawyer, this is what they've asked you to do. So I need you to go do this, and this is what you will do as a legal secretary. And we make it, I know that so your smaller firms, I come from a smaller firm where our legal secretaries do everything. So I do suggest to our students to try and find either a community legal centre or a smaller firm to do your work experience or get your first job in, so that you're exposed to everything and anything, and you get a whole heap of skills before moving on to maybe a top tier firm where you become more specialised in a particular area. So yeah.
All right, well, we might hold it there. Thank you for listening in. Thanks so much on behalf of everyone who has tuned in today, Christina, for joining us and talking about the Diploma of Legal Services students and how they might benefit community legal centres. If anyone does have any questions or would like to contact Christina to talk about implementing some sort of arrangement or, advertising any volunteer placements you may have through the TAFE system, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. So we'll make sure her contact details are up on the screen there, so you can send an email over or you can email me and I can forward the email request on. So thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you for our next webinar presentation.
Thanks so much for coming, guys.